I'm appreciating you. I'm appreciating you. I'm appreciating you real good. I really do mean it. Welcome once again to the Red Hot Mic. I am your host, G. Alfred Palmer, and here's a toast to you the most. Pomegranate juice, great antioxidant. You might want to try it. All right. All right. I am excited about being here one more time. It's the Red Hot Mic with yours truly, G. Alpha Palmer. And I am tonight's broadcast, get rid of these. Tonight's broadcast is something that um, will I'm totally sure will um, pique some interest, and also not only pique interest, but also get some folks thinking about some things differently. But what I would like you to do, if you would be so kind, would you like, would you subscribe and share and hit the notification bell? I really would appreciate that. And in the meantime, we're going to do.
In our current global climate, we're facing challenges never before experienced by this generation. Oppositions where no one seems to have clear directions or answers to the risks facing us. Confrontations like racial and gender unrest, political gerrymandering, toxic leadership, economic crisis, global pandemic, health threats, pre-existing medical conditions, isolation, boredom, and loneliness are driving people to desperation. As a result, people are confused, afraid, anxious, and perplexed, and they need answers to some tough questions and even tougher situations. They are looking into different outlets for answers to gain assurance and consolation. Some have drawn closer to the embrace of family, while others look more towards their friendships, education, and even religion. What we need is a fresh voice of truth and clarity, and not a stale religious echo from the past. There's a re-emerging voice on the horizon that isn't afraid to stand alone and give spiritual and mentally sound direction to a world searching for answers. G. Alfred Palmer offers a voice of sound human development and empowerment to those willing to hear. There's a need for new ideas to old principles, a perspective from a timeless origin, but with current vision, a thought leader who understands what it means to stand alone and speak truth when some are hard of hearing. But if you've been waiting to hear a voice that opens the gates of freedom and breaks the shackles of confusion to allow you to step forward into the dawning of a new and exciting future, then it's time to bridge the gap with Dr. G. Alfred Palmer. He is a dynamic speaker, thought leader, and entrepreneur, equipped to elevate, expand, and extend the development, empowerment, and leadership of his audiences. He stands ready to speak at your next event. His delivery is guaranteed to refresh, entertain, and transform. G. Alfred Palmer bridges the gap from uncertainty to the purpose, to passion, and leadership. Book him today for your next event, and you won't be disappointed.
How about that? How about that? How was that? Well, I am G. Alfred Palmer, also known as the Cat in the Hat, because I do like wearing hats, and especially now, I need a haircut. So we got to get a haircut. I need to get with my beautician there. She's I think on vacation now, but we're gonna get something done here in the next couple days. Anyway, I'm excited about tonight. There's a lot going on. This is going to be a pretty serious broadcast, and I don't know if it's going to get me in trouble. But the bottom line is, some things need to be talked about. Period. And the consequences be whatever. Sometimes you got to apologize rather than ask for permission. Today, I'm going to talk about why did he do it? Why did he do that? And we're going to talk about the mental state and how the whole idea of human development comes into play when we start talking about some of the things that are going on. Just the other day, my hat, I don't like the way it looks here. Okay. The other day, last week, I believe it was, there was a shooting in Buffalo, or maybe it was, I believe it was last week or the week before. And people were killed at a Tops supermarket. And the individual was a 18-year-old boy who somehow garnered assault weapons and went into the supermarket and murdered 9 people in the supermarket and outside the supermarket. I need to say this, and I say it with all due respect, and I say it with all due reverence, and I say it with all due seriousness. These people that are called shooters are domestic terrorists. They are a danger to our community, culture, and clan. And we need to be able to stand up and do some things differently than what we have been doing, because it is costing us lives. And in that it's costing us lives, there's room to be concerned. I'm going to get rid of that light behind me. It was blinking to the sound of my voice, and it was distracting. I don't know if it was distracting you, but it was distracting me. Being here in the nation's capital and being here when we had the what they've been labeled as the protesters on the Capitol, I again say they were domestic terrorists. We need to address things in a way that answers problems. One of the things that you do, and I'm speaking to those that have been given a voice to speak on things. It's not going to be popular all the time. You're not going to be popular all the time, but you still need to speak. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to speak about what's going on, because not only am I speaking to the whole idea of what happened at the Tops Market in Buffalo, New York. It's also the incident that happened this past weekend in Texas. I am concerned highly with what we are seeing happen And I'm going to go into some statistical information and some information that I hope will be helpful and add to answering some of, just giving us a means of thinking about some things. Because we need to change our mind. We need to change our minds about some things. We are experiencing domestic terrorism in our country. There are people who are getting away with terrorizing people, and it's intentional as well. I want to talk about what we've been experiencing, what happened in Texas the other day. I've done some research in that. I've learned some things, and I'm gonna share some things relative to the difference between a mass shooting and a mass killing, because apparently they're different. I always thought they were the same, but there's a lack of consensus on how to define a mass shooting. Most terms define it as a minimum of 3 or 4 victims of gun violence, not including the shooter, in a short period of time. Although in an Austrian study from 2006 prescribed a minimum of 5 and added a requirement that the victims actually died as opposed to being shot and injured, but not necessarily killed. So a mass shooting is just that. It's a mass shooting. It's people more than here 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 people who are shot, and a mass shooting in Australia is deemed that they die. Well, I guess that you could group that in and make it a mass shooting, but I would more say that there's a difference between a mass shooting, because a shooting, it represents that the people, some died, and everyone that was shot, whether they died or they didn't, it's a shooting. But a mass killing, according to the FBI, the Investigative Assistance for Violence Crimes Act of 2012, signed a law in January 2013 that a mass killing is defined as a killing with at least 3 deaths, excluding the perpetrator. So what we are seeing here, however you want to deem it, we're having mass shootings and mass killings. Recently, I want to just mention a few of them. 1999, there were 13 killed at Columbine High School in Columbine, Colorado. In 2005, 8 were killed at Red River, Minnesota, at Red River High School. 2012, 26 were killed in Newtown, Connecticut, at Sandy Hook. 2015, 9 killed in Charleston, South Carolina, at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. 2018, 17 killed at Parkland, Florida, at Stoneman Douglas High School. 2018, 10 killed at Santa Fe, Texas, at Santa Fe High School. 2022, 9 were killed in Buffalo, New York, at the Tops Food Market. In 2022, just here the other day, 21 killed at Uvalde, Texas, at Robb Elementary School. Now, it's interesting to know some things about what's going on with shootings. There's been 27 school shootings in 2022, 27. From 2011 through 2020, there's been 160 mass shootings. There's been, in 2022, there has been 212 mass shootings this year so far. There's been 19 million guns sold in the U.S. in 2022. 19 million. 1 million guns have been sold in Texas alone in this year. Alabama has an open carry law that says that you, at the age of 18, you can carry a weapon openly without a permit. You don't need a permit in Texas. I'm sorry, in Alabama. But in Texas, there is a constitutional carry with no permit to 18 years old, 18-year-old. Now, the interesting thing is you can be 18 and carry a gun, but you still have to be 21 to be able to legally drink. So you can own a gun before you can drink in Texas. Does that make sense to you? Is that logical to you? Well, to some folks, it would. I guess they think it's the Wild Wild West. It says here that more kids are being killed by guns than there are in swimming accidents and traffic fatalities combined. So what are we saying? We're saying that we have an issue. We have an issue. Now, the truth of the matter is, they're not going to take the guns. They're not going to do that. The history shows that. So what we need to do is we need to align our focus, because they're not going to take guns away from people. And even if they were to take guns from people, still folks are going to find ways to have guns. So what do we have to do? There's some things that we have to do. One of the things that we have to be able to do, we're going to have to be able to identify the type of people that fits a profile of a domestic terrorist. We have to find a way of identifying that, first of all. Okay? We've got to be, now here's some of the characteristics of a domestic terrorist. They're looking for media exposure. They will use the media, social platforms. They will use the media as a means to get exposure. They also have a history of animal abuse. Okay, a lot of this starts at a very young age. It's not something that takes place late in someone's life. It starts early. This mentality, this way of thinking, starts early in a person's life. The other thing is they're inspired by prior domestic terrorists. What we've got to understand is this: the publicity that they get, the movies that they put on Netflix, has emboldened other domestic terrorists, because they want to be on Netflix too. And so what they feel is they need to do something more egregious, like what we just had done at Robb Elementary School. Soon there's going to be a movie on Netflix. And so that is what emboldens them. That's what inspires them to carry out these egregious, heinous, demented, and devilish acts on kids. On kids. It's important that we understand these are kids. What are you? I mean, killing anyone is absurd and demented. But the bottom of the barrel is killing our children. But we're killing our children in a myriad of different ways now, aren't we? I'll leave that one alone. They also have a grievance with someone about something. Sometimes it's the grievances with the government, grievances with people that they've known, relationships. See, that's why relationships are so important. And I talk about relationships so much because relationships are so very, very important. And we need to really focus on bettering relationships at all costs, because there is value to relationships. Not only value to relationships, but there's value to, as much as possible, establishing and maintaining relationships with people that may not have it all together, and you be able to identify those people so that we can help them. thing about these types of a characteristic of a domestic terrorist is that they're suicidal. They don't mind dying for their cause. See, the difference between a person who is purpose-centered and purpose-focused and a high purpose mentality is that they want to live for purpose. These people want to die for an idea that it's and I don't mean to laugh at it because it's not funny, but they're willing to die for something that doesn't help our community, culture, and clan, but they think it does. Domestic terrorists, I call them DTs, have mental health issues. You'll find that they have mental health issues. Most of them have diagnosis, some type of diagnosis, or should have some type of diagnosis. The next thing is they have financial problems. When people have financial problems, they really start seeing themselves as victims. And as victims, they feel like they need to do whatever they need to do so that they don't feel like a victim, and so that they can get away from the victimization that they're experiencing, and they're willing to do whatever they have to be able to do that. They have cognitive stressors. Their thinking is not straight. There's some warped thinking. There's some lack of development cognitively. And as a result of that lack of cognitive development, their perspective, their view on things is distorted. And the last thing I'm going to mention is that they are copycat perpetrators. That's why we've got to stop giving these people the type of publicity that they're looking for. They're looking to be on television. That's their aim. And all we're doing is upping the ante when we continue to give them exposure, because that's what they want. They want exposure. Now, statistics say that 95.7 or 96% of DTs are male, with a little over half being white. And so the age that nationally that the DTs average is approximately 33.2 years old. But here's what's interesting. Since 1999, the domestic terrorists that I've outlined are getting younger. They're getting younger. For instance, Dylan Roof, 18. Jeffrey Weiss, 16. Demetrius P., I can't pronounce his last name, 17. Peyton Gendron, 18. Salvador Ramos, 18. Nicholas Cruz, 19. The average of just those right there is 17.6 or 18 years old. So what we're seeing is many of these young boys, they're not even men, they're boys, are getting their hands on guns. They're getting their hands on guns. Now, I'm going to move from that type of information because I want to look at the development of these type of people. I think that's important that we gain a better understanding of how these kind of people become these kinds of people. What is it that developmentally occurs? Okay. Now, the first thing we need to understand is this. There's three stages when we talk about masculine development. We're born a boy, and we're born a boy, and the boyhood normally is from ages 2 to 21. 2 to 21. You say, well, no, he's not. He's a grown man at 21. No, he's not. That's been the problem. We're giving people the excuse when they're not even fully developed. They're given the excuse to behave and to operate and to function as adult when they're really not. So we need to understand is these people that I just mentioned are 18, averaged out 18 years old. They are still boys. They're still boys. So so again, boyhood is from age 2 to 21. Now, here's what we've got to remember. Girls, females, women mature faster, quicker than boys, males, and men. Why? Because the universe intended to be that way. Why? Women, girls, females, throughout their whole life will get older quicker. That's what it basically means. They get older quicker. They mature quicker and they age quicker. And so when we look at boyhood, we need to understand that it's longer for boys, it's longer for males, and it's longer for men. So when we look at malehood, we go from a boy or boyhood to malehood, and malehood is from ages 22 to 35. 22 to 35. That's malehood. And then manhood is from 36 to 75. Okay. Now, each one of these stages has within it an early, middle, and a late state substage within each stage. We're not going to get into that tonight. We're not going to get in, well, a little bit, but we're not going to see. This is part of my book, The Stages of Development. And why is this important? Because again, I say it time and time again, it's important that we understand relationship. Relationship is the reason why some folks are not developing the way they need to. And as a result of their failure to thrive and to grow and to expand and to extend and to elevate, they have a warped sense of thinking. And what they do is they begin to operate and to function in a way that's detrimental to our community, culture, and clan. Now let's look at some things. Let's look at this boyhood, because we're looking at some of these recent, these most recent ones that I looked at, domestic terrorists, DTs. They're mainly around 18, and 18 years old is really, when we look at stages of development within boyhood, that's middle boyhood. That's middle. There's an early, middle, and late. But 18 is between 13 and 18 is middle childhood, middle boyhood. Now, I've talked about this time and time again, the 8 elements of masculine development. The 8 elements, right? You can go back to my previous broadcast, and I talked about them over and over again because it's very, very important. Very, very important. Now, I'm not going to go into them in depth, but I'm just going to mention some important aspects relative to what we're talking about. When we start talking about this stage of or middle childhood, there are developmental markers that we should be paying attention to that will help us to identify these troubled children. And I've worked in the school system, I've worked in the mental health field, I've worked in the nursing home field, I've worked in the educational field, both in the Board of Education. I've worked in every kind of relationship that we could have with boys, males, and men. I've done it all. And as a counselor and therapist, I've touched many, many lives. And so what I'm sharing is not conjecture, it's study. This is, a lot of times folks say, well, what school did you go to? I went to school. I've gone to school, believe me. But that's the problem. We think that just because we have to be identified from a university as to being an authority or an expert by what they tell us that we're an expert, when we are basically just spouting what they tell us instead of what we have researched and found to be true for ourselves. What is happening now in our educational realm is that more and more people are seeing the universities and the colleges for what they are, cash cows. And so what people are doing, they're not going. Look at the people have become multimillionaires. Most of the people that have really affect the community did not finish college or didn't even go. So it's not a matter of getting the school to say that you are legitimate to be able to speak on a subject. You could listen to someone and tell if they have the authority, if they have the knowledge to speak about what they're speaking about. The bottom line is, I've gone to schools, colleges, universities, and I've taught in schools, colleges, and universities. And I'll tell you this, they use the internet as much as anybody else who's not in college. So why would I go to college and get on the internet when I can get on the internet and not have to pay you? Okay? So you can make yourself an expert. The material is out there. The material is out there. I was watching the Johnny Depp defamation character case, and this psychiatrist came on the stand for Johnny Depp, and before he could say anything about anything, they took about 15 to 20 minutes to just try to just legitimize him as an authority, as an expert, because he's going to this school and this credentialing and that. And so that's what we do. We think that a person can't or doesn't know anything unless he's gone to pay and get in debt to these universities and to get these credentials that they say that you're an expert. And then if you don't do what they say do, then they take their credentialing from you and say that you're no longer an expert. Are you kidding me? Well, anyway, don't get me started. I already got started, didn't I? Okay, but let's talk about these developmental markers. Okay, now when we start talking about 13 to 18-year-old boys in middle childhood, one of the things that developmental marker that's very important to them is the idea of power and of force. Power and of force. Okay? Because power and force for them equals strength. They lack strength, and we'll talk about why. Philosophically, they have an idea that they approach the world with, and it's this: the world is dangerous, and I must be in control. I must control it by force. I must control it by power. The world is dangerous. I must control it by force and by power. I must control it with strength. That's their philosophical way that they think. And because they think that way, they go about living their lives that way. The next thing is a mental marker. A mental marker is how they mentally carry themselves. Their mental marker is one of control. They want to control. And they want what they want. They're not far from an early child. They're middle child. So they still have some of those early childhood characteristics. And so we're allowing these type of individuals to carry guns without any kind of guidance, without any kind of leadership, without any kind of training. We're allowing them to have guns. And they use them to establish control. The intellectual marker says this: I will get control through force and fear. I will get control through force and fear. Many of these DTs are looking to go back in time and how it used to be, or how it was for my father or my grandfather or my great-great-grandfather, and so on and so forth. So they're afraid of losing that control. And so they want to regain the control through fear and through force. But in reality, their emotional marker is that they are fearful. They're full of fear. They're full of fear that they can't control themselves. They can't control their environment. It bothers them. They're fearful. They're full of fear as a result of it. And the other thing is, and see, I'm going through the 8 elements of masculine development, and what I'm showing you is through these developmental markers how they are not properly developed in these areas, and because they're not, and I'm giving you some examples of how they're not, and these are the kinds of things that help lead them to the kind of behaviors that we're seeing and the kinds of acting out that we're seeing. So what the physical marker is that they don't think that they physically are able to use the amount of force necessary to get the job done, because maybe they're not big enough. Maybe their bodies haven't matured enough, and so they think they lack control over themselves. I'm sorry, they feel that force by violence is the way to go because they're not big enough physically themselves. They're not physically developed. So they use other things by means to exert force. Psychological. Their psychological marker. You can hear it. They're misogynistic. They are male dominant. There's a difference between male dominant or misogynistic, and there's a difference between masculine leadership. Masculine leadership and misogyny are not the same things. They are two separate sides. Two separate sides. They're not even on the same coin. But here, there is a misogynistic psychological bearing that's male dominant, and even goes further into their physical characteristics. And then chronologically, the chronological marker is that they're still a child. They are still a child, a middle stage child. We're sending them to war. We're giving them guns. But in some states, they're not even eligible to drink. So what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about the stages, or the 8 elements. The 8 elements. And I'm not going to go in, I could go into them, but it's a lot, and I don't want to go into that deeply tonight. But I want to say this. We are having some problems in our community, culture, and clan with people who lack development. They lack development. Now, who's responsible for that? I hold the parents responsible. I hold the parents responsible. I had a conversation, and I was talking about how we should handle domestic terrorism. So how should we handle these kinds of boys? And one of the things that I said that we should do is that we need to identify these characteristics that I talked about earlier. We need to identify those characteristics early in life. See, because the thing is, these things happen early in life. These boys, we're talking about middle stage childhood. These things that have affected these children happen in early childhood. So it's important that we begin to arrest these situations, these characteristics that show themselves. I hear parents say, "Oh, I didn't know, I didn't." I can't believe that. There's no way that something just happened without anyone thinking about it and sometime letting it slip, because we're fallible human beings. What we think is going to come out of our mouth, it's going to come out of our mouth. And so what we've got to understand is that these individuals are basically asking for help, but we ignore it. And, oh, he doesn't mean it. You don't know that. And it's these kinds of individuals who we just shrug off what they say or what they do. Oh, he just killed it. He put it out of its misery. Yeah, because he was torturing it. That's not something that we overlook. The child needs help. And so parents, you are the one responsible, because you are the first teacher of the child. And if you're not taking responsibility for teaching your child, believe me, the community and an existing culture will. They will. And what we've got to do is we've got to start holding parents responsible. We really do. But I'll get to that. Now, the next thing I think that we should do with these domestic terrorists, because they're children, is I think there needs to be early mental health interventions. Early mental health interventions are very, very important. Tests, taking IQ tests, taking the test, yes, they need to be tested more and more. The mental health treatment needs to consist of medication and counseling. Now, I've been in the mental health field for a long time, and I know, and I've talked with plenty of people who had mental health issues and were on medication, and they didn't like taking the medication because they say the medication, I don't feel like myself. I don't like it. Makes me sleepy, makes me tired, whatever. And one of the things I'm a proponent of is that there's a need for medication, but there needs to also be doctors held accountable for properly medicating patients. If a client is too drowsy or the medication is too strong, then the doctor needs to revisit their prescription. They need to consider changing some things. And it's because I've heard some of them, say that they're not going to change. They think that the prescription is right, but the patient is continually saying that I can't function, I can't, and so it's a thing where the physician needs to be held accountable as well as the parent. The parent needs to make sure the child is medicated and taking the medication. The parent needs to make sure first that the child has been identified. Maybe there are things that have happened that in the child's life, and you just brush them off. You can't do it. We can't do it. And if you do, I think you should be held accountable. I think parents should be educated and receive counseling. If you have a troubled youth, if you have a child who is that is has some type of diagnosis or has some issues, behavior issues or emotional issues, I think not only does the child need medication and counseling, so does the parent. At least the parent needs education and counseling, if nothing else, at the minimum, education and counseling on how to handle this child, how things to look for. Okay, so then there's the next stage is I think that becomes of a necessity is institutionalization. Some need to be institutionalized. They are not fit to walk in among the culture. It's not. It's not that we don't want them to. It's just not safe for them to. But we don't want to arrest that. We don't. Oh, he has rights. When he determines to harm others, he's forsaken his rights. When he takes when he exercises his rights over the rights of others, he is already forfeited. He forfeited his rights. Period. And so what we've got to do is we've got to put the person where they need to be. Institution. And if that's not the appropriate, capital punishment is appropriate. If enough has been done. If enough has been done. Look at some of these things that have happened. And that's not all. That's not all. When we look at just in schools alone, and this is just May, there's been 27 school shootings alone. There has been 213 mass shootings this year alone. Now I'm not saying capital punishment is the answer. I'm saying it is an alternative. But I just mentioned other alternatives as well. I think it should be progressive. Progressive. Now, but that's not all. I think there should be punitive actions taken on the parents of the perpetrators. Why? Well, I don't believe that this whole idea that you did not see this coming, you did not see anything coming, or that you were afraid of your child. So you let your child do anything they wanted to do. You should be held accountable, and I think you should go to prison. You should be incarcerated. We need to have tougher gun laws. We know that. But the chances of that happening is not really realistic. They're not going to let you take their guns. Forget that. So we need to address the shooter. We need to address the children or the people before they become shooters. That's what we need to turn our attention, because we can stop this before it occurs in some cases. At least we can lessen it. We can decrease it, diminish it in some shape, form, or fashion, as opposed to what we're seeing, the increase. Also, I think reparations by the parents is appropriate. I think you lose your home, you lose your job, you should lose. It should not be you should not be able to continue in the mode that you have to pay. Those are your children. Those are your children, and your children has become a domestic terrorist. And terrorism like this is not done in a corner, in the dark. In the dark. Parents see things, but they ignore things. Then you should be held accountable for it. You should be held accountable. I know this is not a real uplifting message, but it is something that we've got to deal with, because what is happening in our community, in our culture, in our clan, is we're losing our babies. We're losing our young people. We're losing them. And we can't sit around expecting legislation to come and take place. We've got to take action. And I'm not talking about action and you go out and an eye for an eye, but that's what happened in some countries, third world countries, some other countries around the world, that an eye for an eye. In the biblical narrative, it was an eye for an eye. You stole something, they took your hand. You looked somewhere and you looked in a way that you weren't supposed to, they took your eye. And I'm not saying that's what we should do, because I think that we've moved beyond that. But I do think that there is some proper means of using proper punishment when necessary. I think before punishment there should be interventions, medical, psychological, psychiatric, physical, mental. All these should be done first. But when someone goes into an elementary school and shoot our babies, I know. Someone needs to speak up. Where are these celebrities? Where are they? Where are these celebrities? Where's the politicians? They're not going to do it. The real change to our community, culture, and clan, it comes from people who know their purpose. That's where the change comes. And if you don't know purpose, if you don't know why you're here, then what you'll do is you will exist until your time expires. But if you are a voice, you are a high purpose mentality person, you need to get busy doing the very thing that you were sent here to do. We need you to stand up and do the very thing you're supposed to do. You know what that is. You know what that is. We need you to stand up. Well, that's it for this edition of the Red Hot Mic. It was a hot topic, a hot subject, and I hope that you got something out of it. And what we need to do is help our children, not only our victims, but those boys. They need help. They need help, and they need to be held accountable. Anyway, that's it for this particular session. And I'm hoping that you will do something that I need you to do, and that is to subscribe, like, share, and hit the notification bell. I'll say it again. I need you to subscribe, like, share, and hit the notification bell. Better yet, here's what I need you to do. That's what I need you to do. So until the next time we come together, this is Dr. G. Alpha Palmer. Peace.
In our current global climate, we're facing challenges never before experienced by this generation. Oppositions where no one seems to have clear directions or answers to the risks facing us. Confrontations like racial and gender unrest, political gerrymandering, toxic leadership, economic crisis, global pandemic, health threats, pre-existing medical conditions, isolation, boredom, and loneliness are driving people to desperation. As a result, people are confused, afraid, anxious, and perplexed, and they need answers to some tough questions and even tougher situations. They are looking into different outlets for answers to gain assurance and consolation. Some have drawn closer to the embrace of family, while others look more towards their friendships, education, and even religion. What we need is a fresh voice of truth and clarity, and not a stale religious echo from the past. There's a re-emerging voice on the horizon that isn't afraid to stand alone and give spiritual and mentally sound direction to a world searching for answers. G. Alfred Palmer offers a voice of sound human development and empowerment to those willing to hear. There's a need for new ideas to old principles, a perspective from a timeless origin, but with current vision, a thought leader who understands what it means to stand alone and speak truth when some are hard of hearing. But if you've been waiting to hear a voice that opens the gates of freedom and breaks the shackles of confusion to allow you to step forward into the dawning of a new and exciting future, then it's time to bridge the gap with Dr. G. Alfred Palmer. He is a dynamic speaker, thought leader, and entrepreneur, equipped to elevate, expand, and extend the development, empowerment, and leadership of his audiences. He stands ready to speak at your next event. His delivery is guaranteed to refresh, entertain, and transform. G. Alfred Palmer bridges the gap from uncertainty to the purpose, to passion, and leadership. Book him today for your next event, and you won't be disappointed.